everybody. Good morning. My name is Charles Michael Yim, and I'm the founder and CEO of Cointopia. We focus on primarily three things. It's the token sale, secondarily post-ICO management, so ranging everything from the coin table, the coin analytics, and ultimately listing a token on an exchange. And lastly, providing a marketplace to connect ICO companies that have been pre-vetted to relevant service providers. So my talk really quickly today is going to really revolve around our personal experience as a company, let alone supporting some lead clients of our own. So I just came back from a tour in Asia, obviously pretty much born and raised in the States, so very aware with the SEC compliance laws. In fact, we work with Cooley as well as ORIC. But it's interestingly enough to understand what the international markets are bearing in terms of regulation and compliance. And I'll be off on another tour in Europe and on kind of understanding that market. But it's very clear that potentially innovation can be stifled from the SEC and the regulations that are coming out. So kind of diving into it, probably back up one slide. One more prior to that. So basically, FinCEN just dropped essentially I would say an update in terms of every ICO up until this point is potentially considered a money transmitter. So what that means is you are actually required to file a license. And in terms of the time and the resources, it could be as much as $100,000+, if not more. It could take as long as up to a year, from what we're told. Having said that, there are exemptions potentially around it. We're facing this personally as a company that's actually ICOing, as well as supporting a client through this process. So moving forward, there are other kind of various aspects in terms of raising an ICO that you have to go through. So there's basically aspects like raising essentially funds through a pre-sale, private pre-sale versus a public token sale. And each stage has its own implications in terms of legal compliance. One thing that we have taken very seriously and that we've learned is working with SEC, we have taken a very conservative, risk-adverse approach, meaning that we've chosen to only work with accredited investors, meaning that you have to take them through what is called the KYC AML process, know your customer essentially, and get them accredited. So we've partnered with a leading technology platform to integrate into ours so that we can run each and every single accredited investor to validate if in fact they are accredited. Having said that, there's a lot of these clients internationally that are actually making a conscientious decision to not accept investment from the United States, so therefore not bring on accredited investors from the United States. I don't think that's a good direction that we're headed in, and I'm hoping in the next upcoming months, if not the next rest of the year, the SEC really kind of tries to take a more flexible perspective and standing on this, right? So obviously, Jay Clayton, the head commissioner of the SEC, really thinks that over 80% of the tokens that are going to be released in the past year or two and upcoming are going to be primarily considered securities. Even if it's a utility, it can still be considered a security in nature. So once you're trading these tokens on the exchanges, you have to ask yourself, does it truly pass the Howey test? And so we have a couple lawyers up here on stage. I'm not personally a lawyer. I'm also not a financial advisor, so take this as personal experience and merely a personal opinion. But I strongly advocate if you guys are considering to do an ICO, and like what David Waxman behind me was mentioning, you really got to ask yourself, is it truly warranted, right? Do you really, really need to ICO? Does your product or service really require a token to truly function, provide value? If it's just merely a means of alternative funding, I highly suggest as well, don't consider it, don't do it. Personally going through experience myself, and then for our lead clients, it's an arduous process. You need first, second, third, fourth opinions, and even then, it's extremely risky. We're kind of, I would say, blessed in terms of being in a space that's emerging, it's exciting, it's volatile, which potentially can yield to insane, very high and very aggressive gains, but also likewise losses. So I think just do your due diligence, research as much as you can, get your first, second, third opinions, make sure that you're well advised. But even if you work with the best top tier law firms or even financial firms, that does not indemnify you. And I stress that twice, 3, 4 times over. So if you can seek advice, you can work with platforms, advisory firms that have been in this space, and some of the leading law firms that have cycled through 30, 40, 50, even as many as 100 ICOs. Just make sure that you do, basically the litmus test and ask yourself, do you really need to ICO? And is it a valid approach in terms of trying to scale your company? Thank you.